Life, culture and current events from a biblical perspective. 2020 with Neil Johnson on Vision.
Well, there's been a significant announcement, you might have caught it, from the Reverend the Honourable Fred Nile, MLC, that he will not be seeking re-election in the March 2023 New South Wales state election. And after a 40-year tenure in the New South Wales Upper House, some are saying there may be a decline in Christianity's political influence, particularly in the state of New South Wales. Back today with Greg Bondar, a former staffer of Fred Nile, well-known political commentator, and in the process at this time forming a new national advocacy group. Greg Bondar, a special welcome back to 2020.
Thank you, Neil. Delighted to be with you again.
It is a fairly significant announcement that's been made. Greg, some are saying there's some signals of decline of Christianity without that sort of influence in the Upper House in New South Wales. How are you seeing things?
Yeah, Neil, I've had a good look at this, and quite frankly, the departure of Fred next year, and the election is 25th of March 2023, so it's going to indicate that as from next year, there will be no major Christian party on the ballot box for in New South Wales, and there will be no Christian candidate that party represented. In other words, Neil, this is the decline of Christianity's political influence, and we're going to have to look at what's going to be done about it, because you and I both know, when you're talking church and state, my view is we need more Christians in Parliament, and we need a political voice as well.
It's not just about personal identities here, it is about parties. And Greg, you're a former federal and New South Wales state director for the Christian Democratic Party, but they went through a very rocky, rough patch back in 2021, and the party went into receivership. Now, that is all after your time. How do you reflect on just the implosion of what happened with the CDP and how that might be affecting things in New South Wales and perhaps even nationally?
Yeah, good question, Neil, because I recall having left the Christian Democratic Party in a very healthy financial and political state. We had, candidates all lined up. There were candidates knocking on our doors to join the party, and it was really firing. And I had one journalist come up to me and say, "Greg, I can't see what you've done, but the party has rejuvenated." So it was on a real high at one point in time back in 2016 when I was sort of leading it, and then left in 2019. But now what happened is really the fact that, politically, the demise of the Christian Democratic Party indicates, and you and I both know the biblical verse here, a church divided will fall. And that's what's happened to the CDP. It went into receivership, protracted dispute, and what happened was, of course, the courts tried to sort them out. Unfortunately, the CDP became deregistered on the 17th of March this year. And finally, the final nail in the coffin was on the 29th of March 2022 when the Supreme Court dissolved the Christian Democratic Party now.
For some, it's about perception. Of course, the census numbers, a lower number of people who identify as Christian. Is there some alignment here that you might be able to see, Greg, so far as, political influence in Australia and a declining number of those who are identifying as Christian?
Yeah, I can actually, Neil, because what's happening is if there is a political decline in Christianity, and mind you, the census that we undertook really asked a question on religious affiliation, but it was an optional question, so I don't think it's a true accurate reflection. But that said, Neil, there is a decline with over 40% of Australians saying we have no religious affiliation. Now, if that is the case, political parties which are Christian-based are going to have to make their presence known. Now, the problem we've got is come 2023, Neil, there's going to be a whole plethora of Christian parties that'll be very, very, new, that are going to try and win the hearts of Christians in New South Wales. But all that's going to happen, Neil, is it'll be divided, the vote will be divided, and Christians will not see another person in the New South Wales Parliament unless something is done to unite them and bring them together as one political party. Unfortunately, with CDP gone, that's now going to cause a big problem for Christians in politics.
Of course, leadership is the essential in all of that. And to reflect on Fred Nile, and, perhaps some will say a divisive figure. Either you loved Fred Nile or you actually hated Fred Nile, or you could have sat on the fence, but not many did. But when you've got someone who is a moral, ethical crusader like Fred Nile, if you lose Fred out of the Parliament, even though he, has been more active in earlier years, but there's a certain figurehead sense, isn't there? You do need to have the rise of some new moral, ethical Christian crusaders, don't you?
Absolutely. You see, Neil, I have to say, do I agree with everything that Fred's done? Absolutely not. Unfortunately, he had bad political advice. He was poorly instructed on what to do. And as you can see, the result is now no more CDP. He's actually now an independent in the New South Wales Parliament. So whoever takes over from Fred, and I believe it's going to be his wife, then they're going to have to stand as an independent. They cannot stand as a political party. So who's going to vote for an independent? Nobody. There has never been independent elected to the upper house in New South Wales now.
The thought of Christians, leaders I'm talking about, and the issues that matter getting noticed. There's not a big cut through. There needs to be, a sort of a pressure cooker environment where the Christian voice needs to really begin to emanate throughout all of our parliaments. That's somehow rather, it might take a miracle, Greg.
Well, look, I'm praying for a miracle because what's going to happen, Neil, is there is no moral, ethical crusader left. What's going to happen to issues of concern to Christians? Now, I know we had abortion, we had same-sex marriage, we had voluntary assisted dying, but there's more to come, both in New South Wales and nationally. You've got gender dysphoria issues, you've got parental issues and education within the schools. You've got, all these pro-gender policies coming through, both in government and in particular, even in Parliament. Neil, we need a voice, and unfortunately, there is not going to be a Christian voice that's going to be able to stand up and say, vote for me in March 2023 in New South Wales.
What are your thoughts, perhaps even advice, Greg, for those who might be thinking, well, it's not going to be me who has my head up above the parapet, but someone might do that. Getting behind those people who are prepared to make a public voice about political issues and combine that with their Christian ethics. How are we all to respond when someone wants to get that sort of attention and put their head up above the parapet? Take a few shots for us all.
Yeah, good question. No, because I remember back when I was heading up CDP, I called a meeting of all the splinter Christian or Christian favourable parties, and we met in Melbourne. I remember distinctly having held a meeting, and I said, ladies, gentlemen, we need to form one Christian political party if we are to survive and if we are to counter the attacks that are on Christianity. So my advice, Neil, is if there are parties that are going to stand in 2027, 4 years' time, they need to get together and sort themselves out, because otherwise there will be no representation, no Christian representation in New South Wales Parliament, and you've got to be united, not divided, otherwise you'll continue to fall.
So if you're a Christian and you get to vote whenever there's a state or a federal election, if you're not voting for someone who has Christian ethics, if you're not putting your vote behind a Christian party or a Christian candidate, somehow or other you're letting the nation down. Is that one way of looking at it?
Well, I think it's a sad day that Christianity is declining. It's a sad day there are no Christians, or there won't be any Christian political parties in New South Wales Parliament anyway. I think it's going to be a sad day for all Australians, Neil, because there's nobody going to be putting up their hands and say, I stand for Christian values. I stand for Western Foundation values. I stand to be counted as a person of faith. And if that's not going to happen, Neil, then it's going to be really sad because, we need to have Christians in Parliament. And I'm a great advocate. A lot of people say you can't have church and state. No, you need Christians in Parliament because who's going to stand up for our values, our ethics, and our Christian foundations, Neil? And really, it's a sad day for all Australians because Fred now has really crossed the Rubicon and he's given an indication that, wow, he's the last one. The die has been cast, Neil, and he's the last one in New South Wales politics. And after 43 years, there will be no Christian political party represented on the ballot box next year.
And the Christian dimension, as we would have talked about over the years, Greg, is so penultimately important because even though you have a group that says they are conservative, if there's no Christian foundation to that conservatism, it very, very easily slides to the left. And the only alternative that you're left with is some level of authoritarian socialism. And without Fred Nile, that will be another step closer too. Interesting to reflect on these things. Greg Bondar, thank you so much for your insights. A former staffer with Fred Nile, a well-known political commentator. Sure we'll be hearing some more from you in coming days around this new national advocacy group that you're intending to lead. And thank you so much for your insights today on 2020.
Thank you for the opportunity, Neil, and God bless.
Thanks for taking time to listen to this audio on demand from Vision Christian Media. To find out more about us, go to vision.org.au.